That's the first part of the speech. Any questions? Or observations?
Was it Bird of Paradise?
Any more? Any more questions or observations? Other than your delightful expressions. Sorry?
It made me more quiet inside. It was also interesting that I had the impression that I heard each time more and more. But
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious to hear what you were communicating. I was initially very uncomfortable, and then kind of began to trust of it and just gave myself over to, okay, this is going somewhere.
Yeah.
Not sure where yet, but I'll enjoy the experience and see what happens.
Sure, thank you.
I felt awkward at the beginning with the song that was starting and stopping and then the birds singing again. And then I got used to it, and then I got hooked by the fact that the last time it didn't start. And I was wondering in the middle if you were expecting someone to say, well, I had enough or something, or if you were expecting everybody to be quiet.
Thank you.
I don't know what you're trying to achieve, because I just want to share an experience I had last week. It was called Meetup in Paris, piano mindfulness. It was in darkness, and there was a player on the piano. He was improvising and just very relaxing. The objective was relaxation, and so it was really echoing different sounds because the piano, the same. That's very interesting.
Ah, thank you.
And I think it highlighted my own immaturity and inability to actually pay attention for any given period of time. So it's like, it's uncomfortable with that, whatever exercise it was, and I apologize for coming in late to it, but it did highlight my own inability to not to be distracted for a moment with other things outside the room, so there's still a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Any other speech-related observations and questions? So what about any of you who are in silence and are choosing not to speak, to give me your questions and observations? Any of you in that category who would consciously choose to put your observations and questions forward? Yeah.
I don't quite know where this is going, but I think you're being very brave in this. And I thought it was beautiful. And I found myself a million miles away. So thank you.
I'm a long-term meditator, so I just meditate.
Thank you. Yeah.
My observation is that, this bird's beautiful once, twice, but then I think it was the fifth time, it was no longer. So for me, the quality kind of changed by the fact that it was always being repeated.
Thank you.
Well, I was reflecting if this was a piece of art or a psychological experiment, or both.
Thank you. I have a rhetorical question, which is, I wonder, those of you who've remained silent, do you remain silent out of your extreme comfort with silence, or your extreme discomfort with silence? Maybe paradoxical. That now you choose silence on me when I choose not to speak to you directly in the conventional sense. I did speak to you, but...
Can you put it up again?
Sure, thank you. Albeit there may be long-term meditators in the room, the statistical chances of any of you being able to hold a mental space without a thought for longer than 30 seconds is about 2%, if that. So my invitation for you, you're all gathered here to communicate and connect. And given we're not yet, as a Homo sapiens capable in our BAU function of mental telepathy, so there's those of you who are in silence, the number of thoughts that have crossed your mind in this short period now number into the American defense budget. Trillions. So I invite you to use whatever mode of communication other than your current silence, any mode other than your current silence, to communicate something to me, to the room, to the bird, whatever you choose. My way of communicating that to you, because I ask an unreasonable request of you, which is to speak up and force you to speak up from a position of relative authority behind a microphone, is to invite you to speak in whatever way you choose, to release yourself from what I would playfully provoke you with is your habitual state, your habitual response or reaction. Thank you. Thank you. Any others? I've had a beautiful sweeping bow. I've had a paper aircraft flying across the room, a handshake, a hand clap. Any other expressions of communication?
I turned my chair around.
Okay, thank you. The sound that you heard was recorded in 1987 in the Cornell Laboratory. It is the last known and recorded sound of the Kauai bird. It is a lone male. Lone because he was the last male of his species. He was also the last of his species, and so that elaborate mating call went, currently goes, and will forever go unanswered. His species became extinct in 1987. I'm not going to go either into the artistic and psychological premises of this intervention, nor am I going to go into the details of the destruction of the habitat and the Anthropocene annihilation in which we don't just find ourselves, but which we have singularly as the species that calls itself Homo sapiens sapiens, which is incredible in itself. We think we are not just wise once, but we are very wise. I'm not going to go into that. I think there's plenty on Google and elsewhere. I really wanted to just leave you with the power of speech through an animal, a bird, that we extinguished. one of the 200 species that we will extinguish today and every other day. And to invite you into that from a perspective of physical, emotional, mental perspective and inspiration. As requested, and not only because it was requested, I will play that again. And I invite you, as the great change agents that you are, and you are self-identify, is now that you have that little bit more data on yourself, as some of you mentioned, and your apparent inabilities, frustrations, difficulty to concentrate, anger in some cases, absolutely clear in the room, is let this be a new page. I play it again, and just like my friends in the tech world, you put out the prototype, we were talking about it over lunch, and then we put out the next one, we put out the next one. So let's put this one out. I will do my best on the technology side here, which is somewhat challenging. And then I invite you to consciously interact with that sound and the context that's been given on it as you personally, consciously know best, using your own individual technology, your own knowledge of self. Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? The first time I was able to meditate freely, I was disconnected and mentally free. After you told us the story, the history, this is a species, the only male left, becoming extinct, I was no longer free. I listened to it and I was empathetically connected. I felt somewhat responsible to the humanity that had done this. So in a sense, it constrained me. It directed me completely differently. I couldn't just meditate freely again.
Thank you. I don't know how much time we have. I'm very happy, if you're okay. Well, then let's, my same again, is questions and observations through speech or otherwise.
It's interesting for me, I was thinking about a book I read recently talking about consciousness, and just thinking that this is the last of the species. So imagine it was the last human being. But also the idea of consciousness actually having started somewhere. So it's a book that came out recently saying, how can humans be conscious and animals not be conscious? Because that would imply that at some stage in our evolution, you had parents who weren't conscious, who had children who were. So consciousness is not an absolute.
Thank you. Anything that arose specifically for people during that second session? Excuse me? Yes? Did you want to say something? No? Okay.
I was sad because I felt that I could never see these birds. And I was wondering how we could do to teach our kids not to do the same on other species which are disappearing every day.
Thank you.
What can we do about it?
Thank you.
Well, something similar to what, sorry, Mason had said earlier, sorry. Well, the first time I heard it, I was struck by the idea of process of dying, actually. And it wasn't a negative feeling, it was just a peaceful feeling of the process of dying, kind of quietness of dying, and then sometimes flashes and things like that. The second time I heard it, because it was driven by the context of what it was, I projected emotion to it, of the loneliness of the bird that was dying, which probably it might never have actually felt, which changes that whole discussion as well, in terms of seeing it out of context, and the possibilities that creates versus seeing in context, and the limitations that puts in as well.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks.